All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight to the Village of Cross Plains Trustee Candidate Forum here at the Rosemary Garfoot Library. My name is Zach Mulford. I'm a volunteer with the Cross Plains Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to be moderating here tonight. As you had seen earlier, we picked names out of a bucket to see what order the gentlemen are sitting in here tonight. And the format will be is that each of the candidates is going to have 2 minutes to give an opening statement. We've got a timer that's going to keep time on those statements and give a warning at 30 seconds. At the end of each of the opening statements, there's 4 pre-prepared questions that we're going to go through, going through in order, sort of in snake format. So the next person goes, so that the same person doesn't go first every time. After we go through the pre-prepared questions, we're going to go through the questions that were submitted in writing by members of the audience here that are in the bucket over there. And then at the end, the candidates in reverse order will have the opportunity to give closing statements. So I'd like to introduce to us our candidates, Cameron Borklin, Michael Pomialski, Kevin Thusias, and Bill Brosius. And I believe starting off tonight is going to be Bill, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just the opening statements. I'm going to be your timekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to thank everybody for coming from the library. And when you hit 1 minute 30 seconds, I'm going to wave this orange thing at you. And then when you get to 2 minutes, if you're still talking, I'm going to tell you it's time.
And are we okay to stand, or do you want us to stay sitting, or?
Whatever you want to do.
Great, okay.
Have at it, Bill.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate your attendance and your enthusiasm and wanting to know more about the candidates. This is really your opportunity to learn about us, so take advantage of it. You know, we're going to have some prepared questions, but also want you to be able to ask questions that are pertinent to you and you know, your life here in the village. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a resident here for 30 years in Cross Plains. I am a senior technical manager for Nuance Communication, customer support, basically. I've been really involved within the community for almost since I've been here for 30 years. I've been involved as a Cub Scout den leader, a Cub master, a Scout trainer, a district leader for the Scouts, Grand Knight with the Knights of Columbus and other offices within the Knights of Columbus. I've been on the St. Francis Parish Council. I've been a trustee for St. Francis. I played drums as a band member over at St. Martin's for a couple of years. And I also volunteered at Park School, actually playing drums for them as well. I've been a village trustee from 2014 to 2018. Then I was not voted in 2018. And then I was appointed because we had a member that had left the village as a trustee, and the current village board appointed me as to fill in for her position until this election. So that's why I'm here. I would like to be known as the voice of the people, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin?
Thank you. Thank you to Rosemary Garfoot Library, the staff, the board, to Zach for moderating. Really appreciate it. And for all you coming out today on a beautiful spring evening. It's one day I wish the weather was worse. My name is Kevin Thusias. I moved here to Cross Plains in 2004 with my wife Krista. We moved out here because of the bluffs, because of the great school system. Plus you can get out to the Driftless area rather quick, and it's still a little bit out of town. And we quickly ingrained ourselves into the village. By the next year, 2005, I was on the Parks Committee and had served on that for about 13 years. The only reason I got off is I got elected to the board in 2018 and was able then to get involved with the Plan Commission and Sustainability Committee, which I am on now. I work in town. I work right here on Main Street for the Ice Age Trail Alliance as the Director of Land Conservation. My job is to buy and acquire property rights for the Ice Age Trail across the state. And I've been very grateful to have worked there for over 19 years. And I was instrumental in helping get our office moved to Cross Plains. We looked all over the state. We had to narrow down to a few cities and villages, and we ended up in Cross Plains. And I'm very proud of helping bring the Ice Age Trail Alliance here. I'm also the staffer in charge of working on our advocacy efforts. So I work with state and local and federal government partners, both agency and elected officials, and that puts me in contact with a lot of folks. I've been able to learn from them and how to run their agencies, their government, and use that here at the village, on the village board. I am on a statewide board for Gathering Waters, a land trust, a group of land trusts in the state, and I also volunteer for with my kids at Park School. I play guitar, so maybe Bill and I should get together, get the band together, and coach my kids' soccer as well as participate in a lot of their events. And I'm running for village board again simply to continue the trajectory. The board's been on a pretty good move. Thank you.
Sorry.
And Michael?
Hello, I'm Michael Mikulski. I have lived in the village for 12 years. For that, I was a village trustee from 2017 to 2019, and currently I'm on the village's ad hoc sustainability committee. Prior in life, I was a computer programmer analyst for Northrop Grumman till they decided they no longer needed my services. I took some time off, and now I trade stocks to make a living. I don't know, I go to board meetings regularly, not being on the board, and attend many other meetings. Public safety, now that we have a public safety committee, been going to that, and that has been well attended recently. And I'm running for board because I'm very interested in the village. I like going to the meetings, and I'm fairly active. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Cameron, whenever you're ready.
My name is Cameron Bjorklund. I've lived in the village of Cross Plains for less than a year. And when I moved my family here, one of our first questions was if we could add a park to some public land that's nearby our house. I was told no, it was too expensive, and then we had a lot of debt to pay off. And soon after also figuring out this stuff, I also figured out the cost of living here is fairly high. Property taxes are quite high, and the cost of water bills are fairly high. And I joke with my wife and I tell her, I hate moving, so, we've moved here. I plan on dying in this house. So I decided that I would get involved with the village. I didn't quite agree with some of the financial decisions that we had made to get into the place we are today. So I decided to run. I may not have the same political experience that the rest of the people up here have that are up here with me. They all have been on the board previously or are currently on the board. But I think it's time we bring some fresh perspective to the board, someone who's new to the community, someone who's younger, and someone who's new to politics, to be frank. So I'm running to be that fresh perspective. I want to get our village into better financial shape, save some more money. So then hopefully that next family that moves in and asks for a park or something other beneficial for the community, the answer can be yes.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We're going to move into the prepared question portion of it. And for this, Bill went first, so Kevin, we're going to be starting with you. Everybody, again, is going to get 2 minutes to answer the question. Then after Kevin, we'll move to Michael, and so on and so forth. The first question is, what are your priorities for Cross Plains?
Great, thanks, Zach. I have 4 priorities for the Village of Cross Plains. Strategic residential development, being smart for residential development. Getting our finances in order to look at some larger scale economic improvement projects. 3, developing our identity and continue to celebrate our identity as this great burg just outside of Madison, and a more sustainable Cross Plains. Those are the 4 priorities. To elaborate a little bit, we have 3 developments going on right now currently in place, 300 plus units in place for the village, and we need to think about how to do that sustainably, how to do that in a measured fashion so we don't get 840 or so new people here in one day. Of course, that won't happen, but to pace that out, we have some areas that, so second is large-scale economic improvement projects. There's areas like Glacier Square, maybe downtown, areas we could infill. Our finances are in tough shape from some decisions that were made some 8 years ago. We're getting close to getting those in good shape. Couple, 3, 4 years maybe, we'll be in real good shape. Let's be ready when that happens, when we have the ability to make those jumps. Let's be ready financially to be able to make those jumps. Our identity is really important. Cross Plains is it's known already in Dane County and southern Wisconsin. Let's keep that identity as this nice, small, rural town, quiet, peaceful, with great natural features. Let's celebrate that. Well, let's work with our partners at the Chamber and the Gateway to Driftless to do that. And then sustainability. I as well sit on the Sustainability Committee, and we're working to address things like extreme weather events and keeping us a little bit more efficient and prepared for the future. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, you're up next. What are your priorities for Cross Plains?
Well, first I'd just like to say that my main priority is to keep Cross Plains a very livable town. And by livable, I mean providing amenities and services and keeping the village aesthetically pleasing. By amenities and services, I mean having a pool that's functional and that works people use, having parks that are functional, having a great library that's full of books, things along this line. When you call 911, that a police officer, an ambulance, or a fire truck, or all three show up when you need them. This is what makes our community great and livable and why people want to live here. Coupled with that, we have great environmental aspects. The natural scenery, the beauty of the place needs to be appreciated as well. That's what causes Cross Plains to be a fantastic place to live and very livable. So then you get into other aspects. In order to provide amenities and services, then you start to deal with monetary issues, which is what comes with those, which is dealing with village budget. Then you get into environmental concerns and developmental concerns as well. How do you keep the town with the same feel, with the same livability aspect?
Thank you very much, Michael. Cameron, what are your priorities for Cross Plains?
So, as I've already talked about, my number one priority is reduce our debt. We need to borrow less money and save more so we can do some of these nice projects and some that Michael just mentioned, updating or possibly a new pool, new police station, new village hall, more parks, improving our current parks. And then also, by reducing our debt, we can also reduce our cost of living. Property taxes can go down. Hopefully sewage can go down. My second biggest priority is to make sure that we keep and improve our current levels of safety for the families and residents of Cross Plains. We recently got it addressed, but we were having issues having 24-hour EMS service even just a few months ago. And I sat down and chatted with our chief of police last week, and we also currently don't have 24-hour police coverage right now. Some days there's only 16 hours of coverage. So I want to improve those so if there's ever an emergency that we can get the response time that our families in Cross Plains need. And then my third priority is responsible village growth. And Kevin talked about this a little bit. We have 300 plus houses going up. And we have to make sure that we don't grow too fast, because that is going to cost too much money. And then we also got to keep the nice feel we have in the town, the nice community levels. If we grow too fast, add a bunch of people, I don't want this to turn into a really big town, big city. Me and my wife moved here, and we chose to move here because of the small town feel that it has. So I'd like to keep that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, you're up. What are your priorities for Cross Plains?
I also have 4 of them. The first one is always, and I think every trustee's, this is their probably number one, is reducing debt. We have a lot of debt. Do we have too much debt? No, we can manage our debt. But it's better, obviously the less debt we have, the better we are. But to keep the village going, we do need to have some debt. And we need to grow the village, not only in population and residents, but also in businesses and manufacturing and that type of thing as well. So we're always going to have a little bit of debt, but it's how we manage it as trustees for the village. Secondly is we really need a new police station and possibly a village hall, but definitely a police station. Right now, if our chief of police or any one of the police officers arrested somebody for whatever the case might be, it would bring them down to the police station over to Village Hall in the basement, and there's no place to lock them up. We have had We've had prisoners just get up and walk out the door. We do not have an adequate police station, nor also that floods. When we get a really heavy rain, it does flood. The third is to ensure the village residents' safety and well-being. That means supporting police, supporting fire, supporting EMS. I've always been an advocate of that ever since I've been on the village board, and I will continue to do that. And finally is, 2018, we had a huge catastrophe here in the village with the flood, right? It destroyed a lot of homes and a lot of families and businesses, and it was disastrous. And we really came together as a community to help each other, but can we prevent that in the future? And that's one I think is a huge priority for our village, is how do we prevent that in the future from ever happening again? So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We're going to be moving on to the second prepared question, and we'll be starting with Michael for this one. What do you believe are the 3 greatest challenges facing Cross Plains? And if you could, please list them in order of importance.
Yeah, okay. Order of importance. All right, well, number 1, I chose to place property taxes in this column rather than priorities. So with property taxes, you deal with budgeting, what you're going to pay for, and how much you're going to pay for debt service inside of that. Everyone's talking about debt. The village does have a lot of debt. This year, the village is going to spend over $1.1 million on debt service. That's about 23% of our budget. That's $1.1 million that's coming out of property taxes or other revenue sources that's just being funneled to pay off debt and not being used to provide anything for the residents. So we have to really manage debt, especially if you want to build new buildings, pools, etc. Second important thing, second priority would be flood mitigation. Our new village administrator is very good at dealing with this. He comes from an area where they have dealt with this before, and I think he has a lot of ideas moving forward concerning these ideas. And we have to, or else we're not going to have a downtown and people are going to leave the village. It's just going to happen. People already have, few people have. And the third being environmental concerns. We're surrounded by great beauty. We need to protect it. I love being on the sustainability committee. It deals with issues like that. You have to respect where you live or else you're not going to be alive.
Thank you, Michael. Cameron, what do you believe are the 3 greatest challenges facing Cross Plains? And if you could please list them in order of importance.
So the 3 greatest challenges, in my opinion, facing the village right now is first and foremost the debt we have. We need to reduce that to get the cost of living down for our residents, and so we can provide new things and improve our current facilities and emergency services. Second is making sure that we get our safety levels up for families. I'm saying it again, we need 24-hour coverage for police and EMS and fire. And the third one, this one is probably a little different, but I'm a product manager at a software company, and part of my job is identifying single points of failure in our software and addressing them. And I think a big point of failure we have in the village right now is that we have no redundancy for the village administrator. The village administrator is the one person who oversees everything and gets paid and works full-time to do so. And we've had challenges in the past when they leave and it takes a while to replace them, and then you have different department heads kind of straddling 2 departments and trying to also be the village administrator. I think it's incredibly important for our village that we find Bill Chang either an assistant or a co-administrator. I'm not really sure exactly how that looks, but someone to A, help him out right now because he's got a lot on his plate, and B, to step up in his position if Bill Chang ever were to win the lottery or something like that. So yes, those are the 3 greatest challenges facing the village that I'm going to work to correct if elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, what do you believe are the 3 greatest challenges facing Cross Plains? And if you could please list them in order of importance.
Sure. So if I was to ask you, how is Cross Plains? I would say you would say 95% of Cross Plains is working beautifully. I don't have any problems. I go to work. I enjoy the weekends. I go out for hikes. I do all that stuff. But there's things that come up within the village that I've heard ever since I've been part of the board, and even before I was part of the board, was I didn't know about this. Whatever this is, I didn't know about it. So one of the biggest challenges we have as a village is being able to communicate out to the residents and let everyone know what's going on. I don't think it's a matter of, hey, here's our website, go check it out. But I think it's trying to be a little more proactive. And I think we're working towards that goal, but we're not quite there yet. So I think that's a huge challenge for the village, is to get that communication out to everybody so you see it and you know what's going on. Second is to bring Cross Plains into the future while respecting its rich history. We are 100 years old this year. So way to go, good job, Cross Plains, we made it. But we also want to bring in growth, right? We want to bring in, we got 300 new residential coming in, but we also would like to bring in some business and possibly some manufacturing to help offset some of these taxes. We're not gonna make it rich off of taxes on residential. Where we make our money on residential is businesses and that type of a thing. So we want to bring more of that in, and so it's working with the community and working with other groups to make that happen. And third is road repair. A lot of roads are in a lot of disrepair, and we don't put enough money into roads. Typically, if anything gets cut, we cut roads. We do our bare minimum to keep the roads going, but we need to focus a little more on that for the village. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, what do you believe are the 3 greatest challenges facing Cross Plains? And please list them in order of importance.
Thank you. I think I would have answered this question. I did answer this question differently 2 years ago, and I've changed this. Increasing our resiliency to major water events. We all remember August 20th, 2018. That can and will probably happen again, not in 100 years or 500 years, but probably a lot sooner, despite all the math on that. And I think we have to be ready for that. We have to be ready as a village. The things that make us great, the creek and the bluffs, also make this difficult. We're not developing out in farm fields. We are developing with hills and creeks around, and it makes it really difficult to plan for and prepare for such events. So increase our resiliency to these for these major water events. Secondly, I talked earlier, you'll notice that my priorities are very similar to our challenges. But I talked earlier about the residential developments. That's roughly 300 new units coming to town, 10 vehicle trips a day for those. That's 3,000 new vehicle trips a day in the village. Bill mentioned roads. That's a pretty big toll on roads that we're looking at increasing our current village population by 20%. How can we absorb that? I know we already took a step toward authorizing the potential for a new well in town, something that we desperately need. Nobody thinks about, but we desperately need. That new well is part of the infrastructure that'll help with this new well-planned developments. And thirdly, we need to develop some more businesses. We need to figure out what the magic formula here is. Cross Plains is a wonderful place to live. We all are here because we love it, I'm sure. And businesses come, some succeed, some fail. Why are they succeeding? Why are they failing? Let's figure that out. It's a formula that I think we can figure out. We just need to do that and invest some efforts in that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll move on to the third prepared question, and we'll start with Cameron for this one. How would you foster a sense of inclusion for all residents of Cross Plains?
So this was definitely the toughest question for me to answer. But I think this really comes down to just listening to as many of the residents here as possible when making decisions, being accessible, being available. And I've already been doing that ever since I moved here. There was the whole park conversation when we first moved here for my neighborhood. I was a little bit of an advocate for going to the board meetings and reporting back what I was finding out and that kind of information. And then ever since I started running here and got a Facebook page up and a website, more people have been contacting me. And it's not even related to the campaign. It's just general questions about what's going on. They want to speak. They want to be listened to. And I'm good at that, and I've been doing that. I spoke with Mike here a couple weeks ago. I spoke with Deb last week, the Chief of Police last week. If elected, I'm going to obviously continue to do that. I'm going to keep these channels open for people to reach out to me, and I'm going to be accessible and hear and intake as much input from the community as I can. And then it's following up on the stuff I don't know, because I'm obviously not an expert on everything. I'm definitely not an expert on village board matters. I've never been on the board, but that doesn't mean I can't, dig into and figure out the answer. I mean, I'm doing that today already without being a village board member. I mean, there's plenty of resources, talking to Bill Chang, and stuff. So I think that's the best way to make sure everyone in the village is included and feels included, is that I'm listening to everyone and taking in all their feedback for the various matters that I would potentially be voting on the village board. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, you'll be up next here. How would you foster a sense of inclusion for all residents of Cross Plains?
Talked briefly about it earlier. Communication, right? Getting that communication out to you guys and having you communicate back to us. What's really important to me is that when I talk to residents, that we treat each other with respect. And that goes a long way with talking to anybody, not just here in the village, but in business and in life and everything. Know that everybody's opinion is valued. I may not agree with what you think, you may not agree with what I think, but your opinion is your opinion, and it's very valued, and we take it seriously. I take it seriously when we're having a discussion. And third, keep those lines of communications open, whether that be on social media, picking up the phone, which is probably not a landline anymore, but picking up the phone, or email, or a letter, whatever the case might be, or even in person meeting over at the coffee shop. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, you'll be up next. How would you foster a sense of inclusion for all residents of Cross Plains?
Well, I'd first encourage everybody here and everybody in the village that can to vote. I think that's the number one thing you can do to be involved, and me encouraging folks to vote is incredibly important. That's the number one way that residents can speak. Secondly, the folks in the village should seek out their board members, whoever they may be, and we don't bite. We probably are coached your kids at some sort of sport in town, or we are your bankers, your coaches, your friends. Come talk to us. We're certainly approachable. And then we should also turn around and be respectful of your time and efforts and respond back. And I'm happy to say, not too long ago, there was a day where I responded to 73 emails that came in, because I felt it was important that at least everybody knew that we were reading those emails, or I was reading those emails. We, in effect, represent the village residents, and we should act and vote accordingly, what the village residents want. So we need to hear from you. We should continue to increase our methods and improve our methods for getting the word out to the village residents. We have a new website that is doing pretty well, but can be better, and I think will be better with some of the steps we're taking. Committees. Our committees are a great way to get involved. So I'm hoping that I encourage people to go and get involved with a committee, show up at a committee meeting, get on a committee. It's a great way for more folks to get involved with the village. And frankly, the more people we have involved, the more eyes that are on us. And so I encourage everybody to get involved and be additional eyes and ears. And lastly, I believe that, as Cameron did, that we should just be out in the public more often, letting folks know who we are and that we are representing them and in the village. And I'm definitely committed to finding new ways to engage new folks. And it's not just the folks that have been here for 40, 50 years. It's people that have been here 1 week or 1 day. If they're 90 or 18, should be involved with the voting process. And even if they're younger than that, they should be out there letting their village board know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, how would you foster a sense of inclusion for all residents of Cross Plains?
Well, fostering a sense of inclusion is essentially making everyone feel welcome. I want to make everyone feel welcome. If you're out talking to them, if they have questions. When I first became a village trustee 3 years ago, I was bombarded with so many questions about why the water bill is so high, like instantly. It was like, why is our water bill so high? So I went and found out why the water bill was so high. Then I could actually speak to why the water bill was so high. Then you get asked other questions, you answer. If you don't know, you go find out. And you do. You encourage people to go to meetings. A lot of people don't unless it's something that they are very, very, very interested in. Most people will not just go and sit through a meeting just to go and listen just for the fun of it, which is what happens. So becoming involved and just listening and taking in what they say, really listening to it analyzing it, figuring out their point of view before you make a decision if it's a subject that you're going to have to vote on, rather than just being like, oh, this is just how I feel, okay. Really take in with what they're saying and ingest it. Try to see the other side. That's what you have to do.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on to our final prepared question and start with Bill for this one. Bill, how would you ensure transparency in all aspects of village governance?
So first of all, I think it's really important to be an active listener. I am an active listener. I listen to what you say, and that's why I like having face-to-face, because then I can not only hear you over the phone or read an email, but we can have dialogue. I can see your gestures and really what you feel about a particular issue. And you can see mine as well. I think encouraging communication and dialogue is important. We've all talked about it, and it's important. Also, I feel I'm very upfront with people. I don't tend to hold things back. If you're going to contact me in whatever mode that you do, I promise, and I always have been doing this, is I respond back to you in like. And I try to be more than 1 or 2 sentences. I try to be a little more thoughtful in how I respond to you, because it's, you spend a lot of time either contacting me or contact the other trustees. So, I think with all this, and again, keeping our tabs out on newspaper, social media, the website, that type of thing, is, we can really kind of have you keep an eye on what we're doing, and keep you informed on what's going on.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Kevin, how would you ensure transparency in all aspects of village governance?
Thank you. This was the toughest one for me to answer about transparency, and in part because I feel like it's just a natural part of governance. The board should be transparent. It is transparent. There's state statutes that force us to be transparent. We operate with transparency, I believe, currently, but then I started analyzing how would I help to ensure that. Well, I think the one thing is, again, encouraging more people to be involved. The more eyes and ears you have on a subject or in a committee, at a board meeting, the more folks that are out there that can help keep those committee or the board honest. And I think we can do a little bit better job of running our committees and our board meetings in a way that the citizens, the constituents out here have the ability to look and to see them. I know we recently started filming our board meetings, and I think that's one way that we can help ensure transparency as well. To make sure that the minutes are out there in a timely and accurate manner, and to make sure we're running the board meetings and committee meetings in a way that helps provide input, but also keeps it fair. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, how would you ensure transparency in all aspects of village governance?
All right, ensuring transparency in all aspects of village governance is, I don't know, right now, most information nowadays is transferred digitally. So we need to really take full advantage of our website. So I'm saying it, the website. Our website was a new one that we bought, but its full utilization is not being used at all. I've gone out to the city of Middleton's website, and I think they're using the exact same system. And you can go out there. I mean, I went out there, signed up my email. When a packet is posted for this meeting, for this committee, whenever that happens, I get that email instantaneously from the system. It automatically generates it, rather than at our village office, there are independent lists that are maintained. I've spoken to Bill about this. He knows that our website has all these capabilities. He just doesn't have the time to get in there and implement them. There's a lot of system that can happen inside of there, and he just hasn't been able to get to it. I know other aspects. Our meetings are audio recorded. Those haven't been being uploaded. I just don't think Bill has time. Also, the recording device, they're large files. They have to be converted into MP3s and shrunk down. And so that's why he was like, I want to go to video, because if I can videotape it, I can put it out on YouTube and you can just click on it and I don't have to upload it. So he's dealing with all of these issues. And as Cameron was speaking about, he has said to me that he wishes that there was another one of him in a conversation that I've had with Bill. He's just being very overloaded with developments and everything coming along. So the transparency issue is we can take much more advantage of our digital systems. as long as people have time to implement those digital systems. And getting out packet notifications on time by signing up for the list. When they're produced, they automatically go out. I know I've almost missed meetings before because the emails aren't sent out till Monday morning. When the packet was posted on Friday, you have to go and look and see if this meeting's actually happening or not. It's just issues like that.
Thank you, Michael. Cameron, how would you ensure transparency in all aspects of village governance?
So this question is incredibly important now because our media coverage of the village board meetings has stopped as of February 1st, 2020. The Middleton Tribune was the only newspaper that was covering the village board meetings, and they are no longer covering the village board meetings. I figured that out as I was trying to get one of them to cover this event, and they couldn't make it here either. So without that, the media looking out and overlooking the government happenings, we ourselves have to do a better job of making sure that information is available. And as Kevin said, I mean, there's laws and stuff that we follow, and that information is available. But we need to make it a little more digestible for residents to pick up a lot easier. That includes better minutes from our meetings. If you go through some of them, there isn't a lot of detail in a lot of those minutes. And that might tie into getting an assistant village administrator, someone who can take more detailed minutes or volunteer at the meetings. Better meeting access, and that would be the recordings at our meetings. And this was touched on by Michael already. The audio wasn't being uploaded, so someone couldn't listen if they had missed the meeting or couldn't attend the meeting. We did start recording video, which is something I had talked to Bill about earlier in the year, so I'm glad that we've moved forward with that. And then I think just a better summary of our meetings that gets out on a very easy channel for people to consume, whether it's the Facebook or different social media platform. And I kind of plan on doing this myself if I'm elected. I've already got the pieces in place with my website and my Facebook page to do this. So after a meeting, I can collect my thoughts and do a quick summary that is easily digestible by the community, and then I will put it out on my social media for people to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now move on to the section where we go through questions that were submitted in writing by members of the audience here. Just like the pre-submitted questions, each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to address the question at hand. We'll keep with the same order, so that will mean that Kevin will answer the question first here. Once we've gone through each of the questions that have been submitted here, the 4 candidates will have the opportunity for 2 minutes of a closing statement, and with that, we'll do the reverse order from the opening statement. So Cameron would start first with that. The first question, Kevin. What would you consider the best way to grow Cross Plains without causing the village to borrow more money than it can afford?
Okay. How to grow Cross Plains without borrowing more money than we can afford. Well, I think it's a combination of growing both residential and commercial developments. Commercial does help us more on the tax front, and so that's certainly one way to go about it. Typically, the borrowing comes on large projects. We've seen the borrowing on large projects. I think for the next 3 to 4 years or so, we're going to have to hold back on some of those larger projects and get our fiscal ship in order. And in order to do that, we need to just tighten the reins a little bit on the budget on the borrowing front. There is going to be a period about 3 to 5 years out, this sort of magical period where we're going to pay off some debt and we're going to be able to look forward at some big programs, and then we can consider borrowing again. I don't think borrowing's off the table until that point, but I do think we have to be really conservative when we're borrowing in the meantime. So try to avoid large-scale borrowing in the next few years especially, and then try to get some commercial interests in here to help offset the tax burden.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, what would you consider the best way to grow Cross Plains without causing the village to borrow more money than it can afford?
Okay. Best way to grow Cross Plains without borrowing more money. Well, when a housing development goes in, generally the developer is going to pay for it all. So the services that then are rendered inside that development are generally offset by the tax base. So in that situation, that's difficult to deal with. But on the commercial side, if you want commercial development, we have to be very careful about how we are handing out TID monies to commercial projects. ensuring that they are going to be viable businesses. I think nobody wants more apartment buildings. That money has to be very careful because our TID district is kind of functioning in the red, maybe, and that then contributes to village debt because it comes directly off of general obligation when you borrow against the TID. So you have to be very careful, and that then, by borrowing that money, you then are increasing the TID repayment cycle, which then will put off projects, larger scale, new pool, buildings for the municipality, police, whatever. So kind of goes hand in hand with where your borrowing is going to be allocated. Other ways that it can be done is if we ever get in front of the debt, then rather than, say, borrowing for a police car, you can actually start saving forward money, so you only borrow for half the police car and you pay the rest of it with cash that you have on hand. But that's very forward, advanced thinking in terms of where a budget cycle is currently.
Thank you, Michael. Cameron, what would you consider the best way to grow Cross Plains without causing the village to borrow more money than it can afford?
So I think the best way for us to do that is with commercial growth, as almost everyone has touched on. Cross Plains is an amazing community where families come in. You know, it's a great place to raise a family. You got that small town feel, a great school district. What can we do to then get businesses to also come in here? And that's a really tough question to ask. And I read the marketing report put out by UW Extensions and the Chamber of Commerce a couple years ago. And I think they hit the nail on the head. We got to really flex the stuff we have here, which is our environmental trails and other things. And we got to get people out here for more than just a couple hours to go on a trail and then leave. We need them to stay for lunch, maybe even stay for a day, and a couple days and do some more trails. The problem is that we don't have a hotel. So attracting that kind of businesses here is going to be important, and it's difficult to do because the government doesn't have a ton of control on placing the exact business they want in a particular spot. Other pieces to that is our downtown is pretty rough place to put new businesses right now. You have the highway going right through, semis flying through, not a ton of sidewalks, not a ton of parking. I think really, really, really long term, like pie in the sky idea, we need to consider moving our downtown. And that sounds outlandish, but if we went across the street to Bourbon, there's a lot more room for developing parking lots and buildings, and it's very pretty. So you could get some nice restaurants with some nice creek seating in the back or something. So thinking outside the box to get businesses to come here and to pay into the tax pool is, I think, our most surefire way of growing the village without borrowing more money.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, what would you consider the best way to grow Cross Plains without causing the village to borrow more money than it can afford?
Reality is we're always going to borrow money. That's the reality of things. But can we be smart about it? And can we do it properly? And the two things that everyone's talked about is saving for it, have a little savings, a pool. So like if we want to do a new police station, let's start putting some money aside for that new police station. So when we do go to borrow the money and we have enough money to do that, we're borrowing less. The biggest problem with commercial, and I said this early on that we need to bring more commercial in, the biggest problem with commercial is we have two huge assets here in the village. One is the Black Earth Creek and the other are the hills. We are limited by our village boundary by the hills, so we have a very narrow, long valley that we get to work within. And we also don't want to mess with the Black Earth Creek. That is our natural beauty within the village. So if we're going to bring commercial, we also have to be able to protect that creek at the same time. So that's a balancing act, right? And so where do you put your importance? What's the greater importance to the village and to the members of the village and that type of thing. So, and for those of you that don't know what a TID is, it stands for Tax Increment District, and that means in a small area within the village, you can give tax incentives to commercial for blight areas that are ugly, and to be able to tear down those blight areas. The creamery, if you've been here since when we had the creamery, that was old and it had a lot of asbestos and had a lot of bad chemicals in there. Company went in there, made apartments out of it, and they got tax money for that. They're paying it back in 20 years, but that's what a tax increment district is. So basically, commercial, saving, and being smart about it.
Thank you, Bill. We'll move on to our next submitted question, and Michael, we'll start with you for this one. What is your position on the Middleton Airport runway expansion? One of the flyways is over the village.
Well, having the airport expansion and the flyway being over the village means we're going to be subjected to a lot of jet wash. It's essentially what that's probably is what that's going to mean. Even just last week or the week before, there was a fair amount of jet wash coming over the village. I think they might have adjusted from Dane County, been using an alternative runway, but I definitely noticed it during the daytime. Putting that up, it's going to be more noise, and you know, who's using it, who isn't. I don't know, I'd have to see utilization statistics, but if it's going to be a bunch of planes, it's very quiet out here and it's very nice. So it's high utilization. I might be against it.
Thank you, Michael. Cameron, we'll move on to you. What's your position on the Middleton Airport runway expansion? One of the flyways is over the village.
So this is the first time I'm hearing about it. I honestly don't know a ton about it. I'm kind of in Michael's camp. I'd have to understand what kind of planes are flying in. I know Madison is in this ongoing debate with larger jets coming in. I don't think the Middleton Airport is doing that. I'm assuming we're talking about smaller planes that are flying in. Obviously, I don't want the extra noise if we're talking about really, really large airplanes, and I don't even want to do it if there's smaller airplanes and they're going by all the time. So I would need to more understand when that runway would be used, how often it would be used, and what kind of size planes are flying on it to really have a strong opinion. But at this point, I would lean toward not having it to reduce the noise in the village.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill, what's your position on the Middleton Airport runway expansion? One of the flyways is over the village.
Full transparency, I was a pilot. So it's good for you to know that. So right now the runways in Middleton are north-south, and there's a smaller grass one that runs east-west. So the one that runs north-south would actually be a little bit to our north of here and west of here. That is, so the planes that are flying in now, which are typically single-engine planes or some dual-engine planes, and there are some jets that fly over, most of them are landing, because of the way the wind is, they're landing into the wind, which means they're landing, and our wind typically comes from the north. So they're landing from the south, from Madison into Middleton. When they take off into the wind, so they'd be taking off north, but typically there's no place north to go. So they're either gonna divert east or divert west to wherever they wanna go. So is it my personal opinion, I don't know, because I don't know enough about the plan. That goes back to what's your opinion on that? And that's what I would be really more focused on where we're at with this. My opinion doesn't really matter. You know, I'm just a member of the village, just like you're the member of the village. What does matter is what you guys think about it, and then you communicate back that to me and the other trustees, so then we can act on that.
Thank you. Kevin, what's your position on the Middleton Airport runway expansion? One of the flyways is over the village.
Thank you. This is the first I'm hearing about it today as well. I don't have a position then at this moment, but I would find out more information. If this is really the case, I already made a note to check in on it and have the airport present to us if indeed there is a new runway or an expansion of the runway that's going to cause more traffic over the village of Cross Plains. I think that the responsibility is on the whoever oversees that particular airport, whether it's the city or otherwise, to ensure they come to us and talk to us and give us a detailed analysis of that plan. And maybe we even have to look at it ourselves with our own engineers to really figure that out. Once we had that information, I think we could make an informed decision. Of course, I'd love to hear from the village, and the village would be invited to such a presentation as well. So no position now, but certainly want to learn more to take one.
Thank you, Kevin. The next question, we'll start with Cameron. Opening all village streets to ATVs is a very divisive issue in Cross Plains right now. Would you support a binding referendum by village residents to allow for anonymous voting on November 2020 ballots?
Of course, I would support a referendum. This is a divisive issue. I mean, there's lots and lots of people who have strong opinions. I would support this with this going to referendum on a presidential election that be it. So there's already going to be quite a few people coming out to vote. I would love to hear the village's input on that. Presently, I support ATV use. I support them being used on land and on trails and pulling kids on the back of them on sleds in winter or plowing driveways. But I personally do not support them on roads right now. If a group were to come to us and want to put together some trail across a span of private properties, and they would need a few public road pieces to access and get from property A to B to C to D, I would support them using the roads in very certain subsets of the village so they can use the ATVs as they are designed. But I would not support them going on all roadways everywhere in the village.
Thank you, Cameron. Bill? Okay. Opening all village streets to ATVs is a very divisive issue in Cross Plains right now. Would you support a binding referendum by village residents to allow for anonymous voting on the November 2020 ballot?
Short answer, yes. This is a very divisive issue that's been happening within the village for the last few months. I know the ATV group's been working on it. They said since about July. That was before I actually came back onto the village board. But most of the people have not heard about it for the last 2 or 3 months. But then when they have, there's people that are totally opposed to it, and there's people that are really for it. So, and there's people that don't want to say one way or the other because they maybe have fear of, being outspoken. So, is a referendum a good way to do that? It is a good way to do that. So I would support that. Referendums do not need to be financially based as far as, we need to spend X amount of dollars to do this type of thing. You can have a referendum on this particular issue. So I would support that if it came up.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin? Opening all village streets to ATVs is a very divisive issue in Cross Plains right now. Would you support a binding referendum by village residents to allow for anonymous voting on the November 2020 ballot?
Exactly. What I do support 100% is hearing from people. Right now, the residents. I was recently talking to somebody else in the village the other day, and my take on the analysis of who felt what and the percentages was totally different than what he felt. And I feel like the only way we can really get to the bottom line then, and to the answer of what does the village really feel, is a referendum of sorts. Binding or unbinding, I guess I don't know enough about the nuances between those. My review of the state statutes was incomplete enough to say that there are several types of referenda. But I do support a measure that would allow the village residents to vote on it, to say what they feel. And a referendum would be a way that we could do that we could hear from everybody in a way that they feel comfortable talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael? Opening all the village streets to ATVs is a very divisive issue in Cross Plains right now. Would you support a binding referendum by the village residents to allow for anonymous voting on the November 2020 ballot?
Yes, concerning the referendum, that's a great way to figure out what the people of Cross Plains really want, how they feel. Because these meetings I've been going to meetings, they're very stacked with people on both sides, for and against. So having a referendum would be fantastic. But at the exact same time, I don't think that the ordinance that's currently moving through and going to the village board should be stopped. That ordinance is a pilot, is a trial, and if we're gonna have a referendum in November, the ordinance should be put in place. People should be allowed to use them so people can actually really experience what they are actually voting on. I think people going into the referendum might not have a lot of information about how these vehicles really do affect the streets upon which they're going to be driving. A lot of it is fear. They don't know. Get them out there, let them drive around. Everyone might be like, wow, this isn't all as fearful as what we thought it was going to be. It can always be reversed. There's going to be a sunset clause in the referendum. It's been stacked with safety things. 15 miles an hour, has to be a licensed driver, times limits. I mean, I say continue to let the ordinance fly through and have the referendum happen and let people experience what ATVs on the streets are actually like.
Thank you, Michael. And for our last submitted question, we're going to have a little bit of redundancy here. So we'll start with Bill. What's your opinion of allowing ATVs on village streets?
It's a little redundant, but here's my opinion. And I mentioned this earlier. It doesn't matter what my opinion is. It honestly doesn't. I have an opinion, but what's more important is what is your opinion. And that's what we've been talking about tonight, all night, is communication, having you come, let us know what your position is, whether you're for this or you're not for this. It's really important for the trustees and the village president to know your positions on this. So can you continue sending emails, continue calling, whatever you're doing to get that message out to us, let us know. But it really isn't my opinion, it's really your opinion coming back, and that's what I'll be voting on.
Thank you, Bill. Kevin, what's your opinion of allowing ATVs on village streets?
Thank you. I would say this question is quite a bit different. The first question was really about a referendum, and I think that's really important because that was about listening to the people. This one is specifically about ATVs and my thoughts on it. Again, I think we should listen to the people. I think a referendum is one idea, a great idea to help get to the bottom of that question that right now we're guessing on. I do not support village or ATVs on all village streets as was proposed first. I definitely do not support that. To connect up from point A to point B through the village, depending on the specifics of that, I could very well support something along those lines. Akin to, I think the snowmobile trail is a good example. The snowmobile trail spans the county and counties and states, or the state, and it comes into town via an artery, and then they come to the community and consume and go to some of the businesses in town. So I feel like something like that could work regarding ATVs. I would say something a little different than was said earlier, which is, in my opinion, you guys all get to vote here in April, and we get to, the current board is looking at this ordinance in March. And so I'm a big proponent of pushing that vote in March back to April. So the new board is elected, the new board can make that decision. So I want to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael, what is your opinion of allowing ATVs on village streets?
Well, I think I kind of answered this before, how I think the current ordinance, or what is planned for the current ordinance, should be voted on. But just in general, I would definitely be a supporter of the trial period. It's going to be a sunsetted clause. If things don't work out, then they don't work out. But we need to give these individuals the benefit of the doubt to see if they're responsible with what they're doing. There's speculation on noise levels. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know how loud an ATV sounds. I don't. It would be great to have a few drive around the village and hear what they sound like. Yeah, so I would be definitely in favor of it, and then see how it goes, see if the users are responsible. I know at one of the meetings, there was talk about if citations are written, what sort of matrix is going to be retained, so that when you go back and you look at what has happened, then you have a history of what's been done, if there hasn't been any, if there have, what they were, what they weren't, so that an evaluation can be done, and then those citations then can be made obvious to the public. Should there be a referendum, everybody gets to find out what's going on, rather than them all being hidden or kept from sight. That wouldn't be a good thing. We're trying to have a real vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Cameron, what's your opinion of allowing ATVs on village streets?
Similar to, I think, what most people are saying, I think we should solicit the input from as many of the residents of Cross Plains as possible, whether that's a referendum or some other vehicle to do that. It doesn't matter. We should be consuming all that input. But if I were to be voting on this matter, an ordinance to have unfettered access anywhere in the village except for Main Street for ATVs, I would be against. Again, I support ATV use as they're intendedly supposed to be used on trails, and I want people to have fun with their recreational devices like that, and I understand we don't have ATV trails here in the village, and if a group can get a bunch of properties together and get a trail across them, and they need partial access on some streets to jump from property to property to property so they can use their ATV as they want, I would support something like that, depending on the specifics. But I would not support the current ordinance that is possibly being voted on in March.
Thank you very much, Cameron. As we mentioned before, we're going to move into the closing statements by each of the candidates. So just like the questioning, they'll each have 2 minutes to give their closing remarks. We'll do reverse order this time, so we'll be starting with Cameron. Cameron, closing statement, please.
First, I just want to thank everyone for coming out here. I didn't expect this many people to come. I'm glad that we have this amount of people actively engaged and curious about the candidates running for the village board. So thank you guys for coming out tonight. I don't have a ton in closing statements. I encourage everyone to come out and vote. I think you've heard enough of what I stand for here tonight. If you're looking for more information on that, as I had said, I have a Facebook page, I have a website. You can look me up, Trustee Cameron on Facebook. I will be posting my responses to the questions from tonight there for people to access if they weren't here, and other stances I have. And hopefully you guys, by looking at that, listening to me here tonight, you'll be able to make an informed decision on April 7th. So thanks everyone.
Thank you, Cameron. Michael, closing statement, please.
I would like to thank everyone for coming out and listening to what we had to say and get to know us a little bit better. This is a great thing that the library puts on. Last year they did not do one, and this year they decided to, which is awesome. Come on out and vote. I hope that you listened to what I said and understood how I feel about things, why I'm running for trustee. Cross Plains is a great place. I'd like to keep it that way. We just have to work through a few issues if we want to enact some larger changes, bigger amenities, newer facilities, things like that. But these are remnants of the past that we have to deal with moving forward. And I thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Kevin, closing statement, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again to the library for having us out here today. Thanks for you all for coming out, to Zach for moderating, and Jed for filming. Appreciate it. My priorities, 4 of them again. Strategic growth for our residential developments. We've got a lot of developments coming in. We need to do it wisely and at a good pace. We should be following our own comprehensive plan that says up to 40 units per year. There's a lot of good stuff in here. The market analysis was mentioned earlier. We have a lot of great tools. Let's start using them. Get our finances in order. We've heard about that a lot tonight. I think we're close to the point where we can get pretty excited about what's at the end of that trajectory. Identify develop our identity and celebrate it. Cross Plains is great. The new Gateway group, the Driftless to the Gateway to the Driftless area group, been doing a great job of getting the word out and making Cross Plains more sustainable. I think those are the four things that I really stand for. I will bring a thoughtful approach at analyzing every question, every situation, and try to do what I think is best for the village, what most people in the village want, not just always with my own opinion. Sometimes I may vote against my own opinion if I think enough people in this village will want that. That's, I think, what we should be doing up here as on the board. And hopefully, if elected by you all, I look forward to serving another 2-year term on your village board.
Thank you, Kevin. Bill, if you could give your closing remarks, please.
Sure. Zach, I'd like to thank you for moderating. Chris, thank you for hosting. Jed, thank you for filming. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it, and hopefully you learned a lot about us, or at least a little bit more about us, and what we're standing for, what we're planning on doing if we do win as for village trustee. Would like to remind everyone to actually sign in to the village website. You can get alerts as soon as those minutes are posted. You'll get alerts that there's a village or committee meeting coming up, and those minutes will be agenda will be posted to you or sent to you. You'll be able to get to them. This election is going to be about experience, about trust, about doing the right thing for the village and for the community. We've got 3 subdivisions going in, and we want to make sure we get that right. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a dog park out of one of them. And because that's one of the things I've been trying to get through a long time. And thank you guys for being engaged. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the letters that you sent to me, the emails you send to me, and hopefully the responses I send back to you. I would really appreciate it if you could support me with your vote on April 7th. Thank you again for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for your time this evening and for all the thoughts and opinions that you've given on the questions that were posed here tonight. Thank you, residents who have attended, and most importantly, thank you to the Rosemary Garfoot Public Library for hosting the forum tonight. Everybody, please remember to go out and vote Tuesday, April 7th, right down at the fire station. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out this evening.